Hello and welcome to Seconds Out Live. No fireworks tonight for us. Danny Flexen is at a fireworks display, but displaying the fireworks today, we've got Josh Hart alongside myself, Josh Green, here at Seconds Out Live. Josh, how are you doing today?
Do you know what? I'm actually very, very excited for today's live. I feel like what we were saying before we started. This is history making. This is the reserves being brought out. The two reserves. We're here making our debuts. Both probably a little bit clueless on the way, but like the chat's already said, Danny and Eamon have been killed. That could be true. That could be true for all we know. But regardless, Josh, delighted to be here. We've got the Josh special today, so I'm not going to be one to complain, am I?
Yeah, we are the most interactive live boxing show on YouTube. Danny Flexen not with us today at a fireworks display. Eamon Khan on the scene at a Frank Warren lunch, but glad to be joined today by Mr. Josh Hart. And we'll get straight into the first topic. We'll bring the poll out in just a second, but we've got to talk about Frank Warren joining DAZN. Now, this is one that's been rumoured and linked with for a long while now. I think it's probably over a year since the first rumours started spreading of this one, but confirmed yesterday that Frank Warren and Queensberry Promotions have signed an exclusive deal with DAZN to join them from April 2025. So all their shows, along with the Riyadh season shows, of course, will now be broadcast not on TNT Sports, formerly BT Sport, but on DAZN. Broke pretty late last night, Josh. What did you make of it when you first saw the news?
I was always a bit shocked. I was quite shocked by it all. Obviously, we saw the talks start about a couple months back, but Frank was very quick to shut them down. And then, obviously, you notice with Riyadh season getting more involved, you see a lot more of shared promotion on shows. You know, you see TNT, Sky, and DAZN all picking up Joshua Dubois, and same with many other Riyadh season cards. But it's still something that came as quite a big shock. Obviously, we knew the deal was expiring, but everything seems quite happy with TNT and Queensberry. So definitely shocking, but I think it is a good move. I think it's something that's very interesting. I'm going to see how it works with having, obviously, Matchroom and Queensberry, the two biggest rivaling promoters in the UK, under the same broadcaster. So I think it definitely makes for exciting times ahead for boxing fans.
Yeah, we'll get our teeth into that a little bit more in just a second. But first, we've got to get the poll out. And that's, will Frank Warren and Queensberry joining DAZN make you more likely to offer you some money to subscribe to DAZN? Simple yes or no answer this week. I know a few of you in the chat, and obviously many of us on the team are subscribers to DAZN, but with having the Frank Warren and Queensberry shows, will you be more likely to subscribe to that? So I'll get into this a little bit, and I think it's great for the DAZN app. Obviously, they've all got a huge variety of boxing and sport as well in general on the app already. But to add the shows that Queensberry and Frank Warren are bringing to the app is a really big coup for them, to be honest. The main question that now comes up is in terms of the crossover. Is there going to be shows on the same night as each other from the likes of Eddie Hearn, even GBM with Izzy Asifa? I know Mr. Hart had the pleasure of spending his Sunday afternoon with just yesterday. So there's going to be a lot of shows. Eddie Hearn's already promised there's going to be more shows in the UK in 2025. And with the amount of fighters that Frank Warren has got on his books, you would expect him to invest pretty heavily in the UK market as well. So a lot of UK shows you would expect to be coming in 2025, with the majority of them going to be on the DAZN app. Right then, I'll go to the chat for the first time. To Romani Mode XD, you can open this one up. The two Joshes might not even bother watching. Now, I've got something to say to that. We may not have Danny Flexen and Eamon Khan today, but we're going to offer you plenty and plenty of boxing talk today. An hour of boxing talk on SO Live, as usual. Nothing different there. Danny Trink says, Danny insult in the first 5 seconds. What did you expect? He's not made it to the live this afternoon, and there's got to be some repercussions for that. Peter Baird, he says, yeah, we all remember Frank sticking up the boot of DAZN. and I'd like to have been in that meeting when he was explaining those comments to DAZN's CEOs. We're going to get into that just now, Josh. I mean, yeah, we all remember those days when he was calling it Dead Zone. As we've said, he was referring it to as the app. It's obviously grown a huge amount since then. DAZN has. I mentioned all the sports and all the promoters that are now going over there, all the massive Riyadh season shows that are on DAZN as well. But I imagine, Frank Warren, we were regretting some of those words right now.
I think that the way I saw it put best, Sam Jones on Twitter said, the way you think yesterday isn't the way that you're going to think today. And over time, you see things change. And one of the things that has changed is the way that a lot of news gets spread. The times change in social media and apps are a lot more used now, whereas compared to usual TV. So you're going to see a lot of increase in DAZN. And plus, DAZN is a lot more targeted to those sports fans. You can see how much they've got on there. It started off as just a boxing platform, and now you see plenty of different sports. And then you can see that with all the boxing going on there. And it's not just Izzy Asif and GBM that are on there. You can see Johnny Clark and Top Tier also benefiting from DAZN. So yeah, while it was addressed as the app, that was before it was big. And when Eddie Hearn made that transition to DAZN, it was seen as a gamble. It was seen as a risk. It was seen as something that wasn't great, especially splitting from Sky, who held such a big role in British boxing at the time with some of the fights that they had on there and the platform that it's got. But maybe I think the difference is what you got to remember is that Frank's a lot older compared to Eddie. Eddie's going to understand that evolution with social media and the internet and how that all works. And while at the time he might have not seen, I guess you could say, a successful start, he could see the vision. Did he imagine it to be as what successful it is now? Not at all. But he definitely saw a future with them, and it's a future that other people want to capitalise on now, and that's why you're going to see DAZN become the home of, obviously, another thing that we've not mentioned yet, but Riyadh season and DAZN having the exclusive rights for that as well. So you can see that it is certainly a big playmaker now, and I guess you could say it is going to be the playmaker for British boxing in terms of broadcasters. It holds a lot more than what TNT are going to hold. As it stands, TNT is still going to be involved in boxing once Frank Warren and Queensberry leave them. Obviously, we know that there's talks of Sky and Boxer, their deal coming to an end. We're not too sure what's happening there. But it's definitely an interesting time to see what's going on if you're one of these people that's interested in broadcasters. And I think a good thing with this is that I don't think we'll see a lot of clashes of shows anymore. I think seeing so many UK promoters come under the same roof, we've seen it recently with GBM and Matchroom working together, sharing an arena, and then we could see the way that they included Matchroom's ceremonial weigh-in during GBM show. Could we possibly see that with Frank Warren and Eddie next year once they start working together? There's a lot of questions, but a very exciting time and something that we've not seen before in boxing. So I'd definitely say it's exciting times ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that, Josh. We'll go quickly back to the chat and to Simon Stevens. Says, afternoon, lads. Afternoon, Simon. For all boxing fans, the key is how much the DAZN subscription will be going up. Yeah, you would expect the fee paid to DAZN to go up with there being more content from the subscription. How much of that will be as part of the subscription and how much will be pay-per-view remains to be seen, but we've seen the prices go up over the last year or so, and quite possibly when Mr. Warren and Queensberry join in April, there may be another price rise. So we'll have to wait and see about that one. But yeah, I certainly agree that from a fan's point of view, if the price does go up, then there's very much a decision to be made. DB Cooper 1 in the chat once again. He sees Mr. Flexen and Mr. Khan are too busy being wined and dined by Mr. Warren at a swanky Mayfair restaurant. Benchwarmers FC. Yes, I have to say we are the reserves today, but the reserves have to get a chance at some point. All players in football teams were a reserve player at some point, and at some point they become key players. Maybe that will be today. What else do we have here? The boxing guru. Who are these two losers? There's a lot of insults flying around, not just me to Danny, but in the chat as well. It has to be said. Ramoni Mode XD says Frank addressed the app stuff on the Box Nation interview and laughed about it. Yeah, I did see that interview from Frank Warren on Box Nation. Yeah, I mean, it's it's a difficult position to be in. I guess it's one of the only reactions you can really give in the situation. I guess at the time when DAZN first linked up with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, it was quite hard to see the foresight, quite hard to see it becoming the home of global boxing, which I think many people would say that it is now. So you can understand Frank Warren's opinions back then, especially considering the rivalry was then in play with the other promoters, most notably Eddie, of course. But with Turkey Al Sheikh being involved and the now seeming friendship between Matchroom and Queensberry, Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, I think it's a completely different state of play. And with the amount of content, I've mentioned it a couple of times already on DAZN, there's a real case for saying that it's the place to be. Is it more valuable being on DAZN than it is being on Sky Sports? What do you make of that one, Josh? Do you think DAZN is now the place to be for a promoter?
In terms of boxing, I'd say yeah. I think it is starting to become the place because of how much there is on there. You know, for someone like Izzy Asif and GBM, they've gone onto DAZN not necessarily thinking they're going to be the faces of it now, but you can see what's on there. And then, like, you know, you saw it on the Anthony Joshua Daniel Dubois card. You get their card that was coming up the Friday after getting promoted on there. It's great exposure being on DAZN at the moment. Obviously, like I said, with Riyadh season, but now with Frank Warren being on there as well and his Queensberry shows. And I think it is a fair statement to say the number one and number two promoters in the UK are Matchroom and Queensberry. And if they're going to be under the same roof as an up-and-coming promoter like Izzy Asif with GBM and Johnny Clark with Top Tier, you're going to be wanting to make sure you keep your DAZN rights and having your shows on DAZN. Because even when you don't have a fight night on, your show's still going to get getting promoted on you know, on weigh-ins, on press conferences. It's a great place to be, and it is becoming the home of boxing. It is. I think that is the way it's looking. You know, not just even looking at the UK rights, but looking over abroad as well. Golden Boy with DAZN as well. We're seeing a lot of promoters start coming to DAZN. So, you know, what the only concern is obviously, are the prices going to go up? I think right now it'd be fair to say yes, they are probably going to raise the prices, but because they're going to be offering you even more content than what there has been on there. I know there's already been a lot of concerns about the prices, and I'm not going to get into that because that doesn't really, I don't really have anything to say about that. But we're getting more on there now, so you know the prices are going to go up, but you're going to be getting more value for the more money that you're paying. I guess you could say.
See where this leaves Ben Shalom, boxer, and of course Sky Sports boxing. There were a lot of rumours last year about Sky Sports dropping out of boxing completely. They've been a big part of the boxing landscape for a long, long time now, but with maybe the lack of shows, individual shows anyway, from Sky Sports topping their bill, there would certainly be reason for that. I think the shows that they have put on, by the way, have been excellent. When you look earlier in the year at Fraser Clark versus Fabio Wardley, you look just a few weeks ago at O'Hara Davies versus Adam Azine. They're absolutely fantastic shows, but they're quite few and far between. So if they're not able to sort of add to their slate on a monthly basis, as look you're getting with Queensberry and Matchroom, they're doing shows at least every couple of weeks. In Matchroom's case, most weeks, to be honest. They're getting shows on the DAZN platform, whereas Boxer are only offering a show on Sky Sports, probably an individual show once every couple of months. Really, sort of not including the Riyadh season shows, which have been on Sky Sports pay-per-view, of course. So let's go back to the chat once again. Where should we start? DB Cooper 1 says, DAZN is becoming a monopoly, not good for British boxing, which relies heavily on casual interest via Sky and BT. Now hidden behind a niche paywall and offers only boxing. I hope Sky stays. Yeah, I would like to see Sky stay in boxing. It's personally where I watch the most boxing. I really enjoy seeing the Japanese shows early midweek mornings, really enjoying them, and that is actually where I go for my pay-per-views for the Riyadh season shows. I guess that's customer loyalty, and I think a lot of people that have been watching boxing for quite a while will probably have a similar feeling about Sky Sports, and they will be tuning into those shows with their Sky Sports subscription, even though obviously you have to pay the subscription money to get Sky Sports. It's not a boxing exclusive. They've got a huge amount of football, rugby, darts, you name it. Pretty much every sport is on Sky Sports these days. Whereas, as DB Cooper one says, with DAZN, there's very little on there. I believe there's some Women Champions League football. There might be some volleyball on there, but you're certainly not going to be buying or subscribing to the DAZN app for other sports. The only reason you're going to be subscribing that likely is for the boxing coverage. Roger L says, gutted about this news. Just for example, I watched the Liam Davies fight at the pub on Saturday. Won't be able to do that anymore. I'm not too sure about that. I know some pubs do stream DAZN, so of course that option will be there, but most pubs do have TNT Sports and Sky Sports, so I imagine there'll be a lot of places around the country that will be showing less boxing in a pub environment. So yeah, that will certainly be a miss. Zambano Love says, will DAZN pay-per-view price now increase with their monopoly? Was Sky/TNT subsiding costs to some degree? Possibly. I don't really know about that one. DB Cooper one again says, how have we normalised a pay-per-view every month? £15 to £25 just for mostly prospect shows, which all good stuff. It's pay-per-view. DAZN even stopped giving 4 a.m. USA fights for free. Now pay-per-view, bad for fans. Yeah, there is a lot of pay-per-view boxing around at the moment. You have to say that, but a lot of the shows that are being shown are pay-per-view worthy. I think in previous years they may have come from different outlets, whether it would have been the Queensberry pay-per-view card and a Matchroom pay-per-view card. 6 weeks beyond that, I think the fact that they're all under one banner and all available on one platform, that possibly makes the hit look a little bit harder than it was. But yeah, just going back to Ben Shalom and Sky Sports, Josh, I think it's interesting the position that this leaves them in. It's rumoured, of course, that the Sky Sports deal is up in August. What do you see as the sort of viable options for Sky Sports as far as their boxing coverage goes in the future?
It's an interesting one. There's a lot of ways to look about it. Obviously, if we've heard the talks that Sky have been looking at pulling away from boxing, obviously on the plus side for Boxer, I guess you could say, is that there is that slot with TNT, but we've not heard much of talk about what TNT are going to do and whether they're going to stick around and stay in the boxing scene. So it's an interesting one. And if I'm being honest, I'm not too sure, because this whole news with Frank going to Queensberry is so fresh that there's all the talk about that. And then there's still the whole next conversation of, well, what's TNT Sports' future, especially with this whole big rebrand that they've just done as well. It's not long since they turned to TNT Sports from BT. So we've got to wait and see. But yeah, hopefully Sky don't pull out of boxing. But you could never know. You could see someone like GBM and someone like Top Tier, especially for GBM. I know I've mentioned GBM a lot, but I am a massive fan of their work. And they are starting to creep up on those bigger promotions with the quality of the shows they're putting on. Could we maybe see them go and take a lead position in one of the broadcasters with a TNT, with a Sky, especially with the slots opening up? So only time can tell, but definitely exciting times.
So we'll jump into our second topic now, and it revolves around Anthony Joshua and his plans for his comeback, or what those plans will look like. A lot of speculation recently about where he now stands in the boxing world. That Daniel Dubois rematch seems to be off the table. I know Frank Smith and a lot of the Matchroom team have talked about February certainly being too early for that. And Frank Warren seems to be chasing different fights and different options for Daniel Dubois to defend his IBF title. And what are those options? I'm sure you can give us some ideas of who you would like to see in the comments below. There's a few on the table. Personally, for me, top of the list would have to be Joseph Parker. He's been in that mandatory position for quite some time now and has really earned his shot with the wins over Zhilei Zhang and Deontay Wilder. But there are a number of other names that could be considered on the list. Fabio Wardley's been one that's been banded around after his win over Fraser Clark. Of course, he is also a Frank Warren fighter, as is Joseph Parker, under contract with Queensberry as well. They've got a real monopoly on that heavyweight division. Before I sort of make my reasons for my choices, who do you think Anthony Joshua should fight next, or maybe not fight at all, Josh?
I think if Anthony Joshua is going to fight again, which does seem the option, the big option that obviously has been mentioned by Frank Smith, and when I spoke to Adam Smith yesterday in Sheffield, his big point was he should sit back, maybe have a quick holiday before Christmas to Saudi. There's some big fight going on over there. If people haven't heard already, Fury versus Usyk 2. He should see what happens with that and then go from there. But one thing that I've been thinking is there still the hype for Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury? In one sense, there is, in that it's a fight that's been talked about for so long, and it's a fight that's always going to be thought about, especially when you look at it from a casual boxing fan's perspective. But then you think of it from the other perspective of what it could have been and when we didn't get it. So if AJ isn't going to wait for the Fury Usyk winner, then I guess, I mean, I know I think Frank Warren said maybe fight Fabio Wardley. I'm not sure about that. I don't really see who else he could fight away from the Dubois rematch. I don't really know who is out there for AJ because, 1 minute you're saying we need to take him straight back into the rematch. There's a prime opportunity to become a 3-time heavyweight world champion. But the belts are tied up. Maybe they wait and see what happens once Usyk Fury plays out again, and then the belts start to fragment even more. I'm not too sure. I'd say if there's anyone that I'd like to see Anthony Joshua face, though, the one fight that I think will always be there, it has to be the Wilder fight for Anthony Joshua. That Wilder fight, and especially when we thought we were there back in December after the Otto Wallin fight, and then Wilder loses. Obviously, it all goes falling down. But now that AJ has lost again as well, it brings them back on a similar path. And I do think if any fight is out there that is going to sell, and I guess you could see warrant a fight that, again, you could say it puts them both back in a world title picture. Whoever wins, it kind of has that effect. It's such big names. So I guess I'd say AJ versus Wilder next if it's not going to be Dubois.
Yeah, I mean, Wilder is certainly the one that sort of leaps to the page, isn't it? Parker and Wardley are probably at the front of the queue for Daniel Dubois. Certainly Parker is. I don't know whether the Joshua Wilder fight is now a Wembley fight. We know, I don't want to say they were certainly weren't struggling for tickets with Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, but after he's taken another loss, and I know we spoke to some fans outside the arena following the fight, and a lot of fans were down on Anthony Joshua's performance, and I think a lot of fans, after seeing what Daniel Dubois did to him on that night, they probably don't have the belief that Anthony Joshua can go back and win the world title. And if he's not going to go back and win a world title, I mean, why would 80,000 plus people, 90,000 people attend a fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder? It's an absolutely fantastic fight for the division. And I would have to say, if there's anything on the line, it's both of the fighters' careers. Whoever was to lose that fight, certainly, in my mind anyway, wouldn't fight again. I know we spoke to Malik Scott, who of course works with Deontay Wilder, about the future of the Bronze Bomber last week, or Radio Rahim had that conversation. And yeah, he believes that Wilder will be back in the ring. No sort of clue as to who that will be yet. They seem keen on the Anthony Joshua fight. And if that is to be made, maybe now is the perfect time for that. The one thing I will say is we saw the amount of power that Daniel Dubois had and the effect that had on AJ. We know Wilder as an absolutely huge puncher on his day, certainly at his peak. Would there be a possibility of Wilder to being able to do the same job on Anthony Joshua? I'm not sure. I'm just sort of putting it out there. As far as the Joshua Fury fight goes, I think the value of that fight is diminishing sort of by the week at the moment. When they were number 1 and 2 in the division and they both had world titles, that fight was absolutely huge. It was the biggest fight in world boxing. But now you've got Fury coming off a loss to Alexander Usyk, AJ coming off another loss in his career to Daniel Dubois, as he was the challenger in that world title fight. With no world titles on the lines, it could be the number 2, or some people might see Fury as number 3 in the division against Anthony Joshua, who considered maybe 4 or 5 in the heavyweight division. If you're looking at a number 2 versus number 4, or number 3 versus number 4 in the division, is that a bigger fight? As big a fight as it once was? Absolutely not, in my opinion. And with the upcoming Usyk versus Fury rematch, if Fury loses that, then there's absolutely no telling what direction Fury's going to go into. So, I think there's a possibility that we've lost that one, but hopefully a big fight can be resurrected for Anthony Joshua sometime next year. We'll just go back to the chat. And Thunder Road, nice to see you in the chat once again. Damn, the 2 Joshes on Seconds Out Live. Reminds me of Arsenal's League Cup lineup under Arsene Wenger. I'm reminiscing and just hit the thumbs up. Yes, we are the reserves. We've mentioned that a couple of times, but grateful for the opportunity today to take the hot seat of Danny Flexen and Eamon Khan. And thank you once again for directing people to the thumbs up button. DB Cooper 1 replying to Big Chungus regarding the ladder behind Josh. Josh, ladder behind you?
It's just a little ladder to a storage unit. I'm more concerned. Got a few bits up there, just painting the wall. If we look a little bit further down the chat, I actually get accused of being a drug dealer again. For the God knows how many live and around. To be honest, I'm just going to say this now. This might be one of the most horrific chats I've ever seen and stuff directed at me. I just feel abused at this point. Well, Josh, if you just keep reading through and just see the conversation that's been going on in this chat, you'll be a little bit concerned.
I will ignore much of that conversation, I'm sure. Toby Bartlett says, if more people subscribe, then shouldn't have to raise the prices too much higher. So maybe they can keep the prices down, similar to Turkey's way of thinking. Yeah, we certainly hope the next coming Riyadh season card, the CBS versus Zerdo Ramirez card, that'll be free, I believe, on Sky Sports Boxing, which is absolutely fantastic to see, and keep them coming, although I can't see any other Riyadh season shows in the future being free to air. Could be wrong, though. Happy to be proved wrong. DB Cooper 1 says, DAZN, the home of boxing, Saudi Pro League, Women's Champions League. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what I mean when I was saying before, the sort of amount of different sports on the DAZN app is pretty bleak, to be honest. Unless you're a big boxing fan, that is certainly the only reason you would want to subscribe to that. If I just scroll here, Ramoni Mode XD says DAZN has GBM, mate. Yeah, DBM is very much on DAZN. They announced their signing of Shakan Pitters yesterday, who, speaking to him, he will be in a European title fight very, very soon, hopefully before the New Year's. And Barno Love says any pay-per-view worthy fighters at Sky could leave very soon if they stick around. I actually heard Fraser Clark speaking with, I believe it was with Box Nation, although don't quote me on that one, saying that he wasn't there just last week to support his gym mate Ezra Taylor. He was there for conversations. So, just interesting comments there from Fraser Clark. Who knows what conversations he was having? Obviously, it was a Queensberry and Frank Warren card. So, maybe there were some conversations. Maybe there weren't. DB Cooper 1 says, I used to love GBM2 until they joined DAZN. Now it's hidden away. They should have waited to replace TNT or join Sky. I think GBM's doing a great job at the moment, to be honest. I was at their show in Sheffield a few weeks back. It was the day before the rescheduled Dalton Smith card in Sheffield at Terry Harper against Rhiannon Dixon. It was a fantastic card, a card really deep with quality. The main event wasn't a cracker. It was Shaquille Thompson versus River Wilson Bent, but some of the stuff in the undercard was superb. Ryan Walsh and Reese Mould, Huey Fury in a step up, it has to be said, against Christian Tunn. A number of their other prospects on the card, a British women's title fight. I think GBM are doing some really good shows at the moment, and hopefully being on DAZN enables them to do some good ones in the future. Thunder Road says, GBM puts on an entertaining show. I like Izzy's personality and charisma, linking up with Adam Smith. And TalkSport doesn't hurt either. What else have we got here? Deary me, I see what you were saying here, Josh. We will scroll right through that to Zambano Love, who says, think constant rematch clauses have put the public off. Every AJ fight since losing to Ruiz was promoted as a must-win. Gets fans falsely invested to find out the result. Doesn't matter because of a rematch. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to see a rematch between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois, at least. Before we leave this conversation alone, Josh, I briefly mentioned who I'd like to see in the ring with Daniel Dubois next. Obviously, Anthony Joshua, not in that conversation, really. Joseph Parker, Fabio Wardley, certainly some of the names mentioned. Who would you like to see him in the ring with?
Well, I think if it was an ideal world, and a world where there was no contracts holding fighters back, I'd have to say Joseph Parker. But when you look at what's going on at the moment, so Joseph Parker apparently is still contracted to a rematch with Zhele Zhang, despite winning that fight and for it being an interim world title. There was a rematch clause in Zhang's favour if he was to lose. So he's still got to wait for that rematch unless they give Zhang a step-aside fee. Obviously, Ajit Kabayel and Bacoli, they seem to be tied up. So I'm going to say this, and I made this point to Adam Smith yesterday in an interview coming out in hopefully the next couple of days. I said we could be at the perfect time, not in terms of where Fabio Wardley is in his career, but in terms of the amount of noise around that career that Fabio Wardley's got right now. He's just coming off a statement win in Saudi, and it's to a point where sorry, I've just had a message in the chat that's really put me off. He's at a point now where a lot of people are talking about him. The IBF have approved for him to fight for that world title. Why should we hold Fabio Wardley back? It's a win-win type of fight for him. He can either win the fight and become a world champion, and if he puts in a great performance and might come up short, okay, but he's going to go into the fight as a huge underdog. He's going to go into the fight as, not having a chance from a lot of people, if anyone. Give him that shot. He's riding a massive high at the moment. He's just gone into a rematch after a fight of the year contender in a fight where a lot of people were slowly starting to turn against Fabio heading into the rematch, and went and ended it inside the first round. You can't end a chapter like that in any more decisive fashion. So I'm going to put it out there. I'd be more than happy to see Daniel Dubois versus Fabio Wardley next. I think in just terms of where they both are, I think it's a good fight to make. I think it's an exciting fight to make, and it's heavyweight boxing. One punch can change anything. So I'd definitely pay the pay-per-view money to watch Daniel Dubois versus Fabio Wardley if that was to be made next.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win for Fabio Wardley. If he loses to Daniel Dubois, he's lost to a more experienced fighter at the level, and he can certainly build again, and he would probably be elevated. I'd imagine coming off a win against Fraser Clark, if he was to step all the way up to world level, the fights beyond that would be of a greater significance than the fight with Fraser Clark. So yeah, Fabio Wardley would be a great fight for me against Daniel Dubois. Similar styles in many ways, both huge punches. So yeah, Dubois would obviously go in as a pretty heavy favourite, especially considering the last performance against Anthony Joshua. So, but Fabio Wardley more than a chance in there, massive puncher, and yeah, a fight I would like to see. Just a reminder, we've got our poll out, which is, would you be more likely to subscribe to the DAZN app? Following Frank Warren and Queensberry's signing, they will be joining DAZN in April 2025. So would you be more likely to subscribe to DAZN with Queensberry on the app? Just a simple yes or no answer for that one. So we'll swiftly move on to our third topic, which revolves around Chris Eubank Jr. And we'll send this straight back to Mr. Hart. No Chris Eubank Jr. versus Canelo. It's been rumoured a couple of times this year, but Eddie Reynoso, Canelo's head trainer, putting a complete stop to that. Absolutely no chance that we're seeing Chris Eubank Jr. in with Canelo. What are your thoughts?
I think it's the right thing to have been done, to be honest. I don't really see what Eubank Jr. has done in recent time to deserve a fight of that level. Obviously, one thing, again, I've been making very clear in a couple of the interviews that I've been doing over the last week or so, is that the rivalry for Eubank Jr. is kind of reignited with Conor Benn. Obviously, I know there's one thing chasing those world titles, but you've got to earn the world titles, and it's not even like Eubank Jr. fights at super middleweight, he fights at middleweight. So he'd have to, jump up a weight class, but he's not got any wins in recent time that give him a world title fight like that. So if he does want to fight for world titles, maybe he has got to go out there and fight a few of those contenders. And if he wants to fight Canelo, maybe he's got to make that jump to super middleweight, which isn't the most outrageous thing. He does look like he struggles to boil down to 160 pounds at middleweight as it is. So the move to super middle is not the problem. It's he's not fought anyone there yet. And it's not exactly like he's been an undisputed champion before. And it's not like you're jumping in with any old world champion. You're jumping in with Canelo Alvarez, one of the most dominant world champions of this era. Okay, he has that couple losses on there to Mayweather and Bivol. Look at what Mayweather went on to do in his career, and look at what Bivol's gone on to do in his career as well. Arguably, in some people's eyes, the undisputed light heavyweight world champion. So, you know, I wouldn't have had much interest if we were to get Canelo versus Eubank. I think I have much more interest in seeing Eubank versus Benn. Obviously, not necessarily for the weight reasons. Obviously, that's one different issue. But I think there's a lot more general public interest in that fight than what there is in a fight between Canelo and Eubank for obvious reasons. I think there's other fights out there for Canelo that would generate a lot more interest for him. And I think there's other fights out there for Eubank Jr. that would generate interest for him. But I just don't think a fight with them two together generates a lot of interest. So I think it's the right call to not go forward with that fight from Eddie Reynoso.
I'll just read you the quote from Eddie Reynoso. Responding to rumours that they were in negotiations, he said, "It's totally false. Eubank has had his chance to fight Canelo in September, and the only thing he did was complicate negotiation. We will not touch base with him again for a future fight. Whatever I tell you is always true. I don't like making statements, but what I declare is true." And yeah, I mean, a completely fair statement there from Eddie Reynoso. You don't hear him talking too much, especially on his fighters' behalf. And as mentioned, Eubank Jr. had his chance in September to have that fight with Canelo. We know there was an open spot that was eventually taken by Edgar Berlanga. Yeah, Eubank Jr. had his opportunity, he passed up on it. And if they're trying to make that fight now, the opportunity to have a crack at those world titles, no matter how much of an underdog he may be in that fight, is now gone. So what are the big fights for Chris Eubank Jr.? Conor Benn, obviously very much top of that list. I know Adam Smith said to you yesterday, Josh, that fight could be a lot sooner than we thought, than we think it might be. So early next year, maybe we're seeing Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. There's a few sort of nuts and bolts to get sorted before Conor Benn is able to accept that big fight, but we'll see how that sort of unfolds over the next few weeks, I'm sure. As far as other big fights go for Chris Eubank Jr., there aren't a huge amount on the table. There's the obvious world title fights, which would be sold on the name of Chris Eubank Jr. with very little sort of balancing the scales in the favour of the opponent, although the opponent whether it be Carlos Adames or another name, would likely be a favourite going into that as the champion, who's someone who's fought at that level. You've obviously got the Hamza Shiraz fight. That would be a big money fight. We know Eubank is, shall we say, he's very interested in the money fights, not necessarily the legacy fights. And a Hamza Shiraz fight on the Riyadh season card would tick all of those boxes. He's a very tough fight against an up-and-coming contender, somebody who, in my opinion, is ready for a world title now. But there would be a massive paycheck attached to it. So is that one that you can see, Josh, Hamza Shiraz versus Chris Eubank Jr.? Because I know that it's been sort of dotted around a few times, but it never seems to have quite got to a stage where we've been close to announcing that.
Yeah, it's a fight I would have been interested in, but I don't think we're going to get it. Obviously, we've seen that Hamza Shiraz has been made mandatory for Janibek to challenge for that WBO title. And from what all things look like, Hamza Shiraz has already publicly stated that he's in training camp to fight on February 22nd. So if he's mandatory and he's going to be giving up his EBU European title, there's only one real sign that he's going to be fighting Janibek next. But one fight that was mentioned to me yesterday when I spoke to Izzy Asif, obviously we all know that Izzy's quite good friends with Billy Joe Saunders, and he said he still feels that Billy Joe Saunders has a lot to offer boxing. Obviously he mentioned the fact that he's still not in any shape to be getting back down to a middleweight limit to fight, but he still feels that if Billy Joe was to come back and go for a fight with Chris Eubank Jr., there'd be a lot of interest, and I tend to agree. I think Billy Joe, in the years of his absence, he's still been talked about time and time again, not ever really being properly in the headlines, but you still see the odd boxing fan mentioning him, and we can remember how big of a name that he was, especially with that big fight with Canelo, how many eyes that put on him. I think a fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Billy Joe, it could be up there as one of Eubank Jr.'s biggest fights, especially if you want a fight, if you're Eubank Jr., that's going to have eyes on it, but not only just have eyes on it, pay you a hell of a lot of money. There's not a lot of names out there. You've done the Liam Smith saga now. That's a bit dead in the water, I guess you could say. You can't really go back for a third one there. The Conor Benn one's always going to be there until they do it. And then if we get a decisive enough finish, I don't really know. Some people make the argument, we could see that fight again and again and again, but I don't think you can, simply because it's one of those fights where they don't fight at the same weight. Conor Benn fights at super welterweight at the moment, but a lot of people say that he is a welterweight. Eubank Jr. fights at middleweight, but looking like he needs to move up to super middleweight soon. So I think the timeline of making that fight with Conor Benn, the deadline's getting closer and closer by the day, because Eubank Jr. is not going to get any smaller. He's not going to all of a sudden be able to go, yeah, I'm going to boil back down to 158, like they agreed for the catch weight. So I think they really need to get a move on and get this Conor Benn fight sorted. And for all we know, it might be sorted. We're not seeing any reports, but boxing moves in mysterious ways. And with the influence of Turki Al-Sheikh, we see how quickly fights get done. So, hopefully we can get that fight soon. I hope Adam Smith's correct when he said to me that we get to see that fight early 2025, because it's a fight that's been talked about long enough, and the perspective of the fight has changed in my eyes. In the fact that when it first got made back in 2022, it was solely down to family history, the dad's having a great fight back in the day. But as time's gone on, and obviously with the circumstances of what's happened over the last 2 years, I feel the narrative of it has turned, and it's now a lot more personal. But I'm not seeing that tension on both ends. I'm seeing a lot of passion and a lot of tension and aggression from Conor Benn. And Eubank Jr., obviously, I know the first time they came face-to-face on the Better Be a Bivol fight week, Eubank Jr. was either just about to weigh in or had just weighed in, so it was very drawn out and very dehydrated. But even on the fight night after he beat Zarameta, Eubank still didn't look like he had that proper fire in his eye. But I don't really think we've ever seen Eubank have that fire in his eye and look like he really wants to hurt someone. He just keeps cool, calm, collected, goes into the ring, gets the job done and takes his money and goes. And then he'll go back to playing poker with Neymar. So, it's fair what he's doing. So yeah, I think the Conor Benn fight's the only one that sticks out. Obviously, I get Izzy's point about the Billy Joe fight, but we need to see Billy Joe just get himself back in the gym and get into a fighting shape before we can even start talking about fights again. So the only ones that really stick out is Shiraz would be great, but I think if Shiraz wins a world title, I think he will start maybe not showing as much interest in a Eubank Jr. fight. So for me, I think Eubank Ben is the only fight out there.
Yeah, and I think with Shiraz as well, he's absolutely huge for the weight, and you don't know at what point he's gonna need to move up in weight. We hope he can get that world title at middleweight before he moves up to super middle, but there's certainly going to be a point where he needs to do that. Maybe that makes the fight with Eubank Jr. more plausible. Maybe it doesn't, but as far as the Billy Joe fight goes, I'd be very surprised if he went straight in with Eubank Jr. I think after so long out the ring, I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been a long, long time. He would need 1, 2, 3 tune-up fights, and I think that's the fairest word to use to make sure he's not got that ring rust. Make sure he's ready for a big fight and a fight that he won't want to lose. So it would be silly to go straight into that fight for Billy Joe Saunders. It's a fight that he would not want to lose. Those two do not like each other, and he would want to make sure that he's at full fitness and full health and at his top ability going into that fight. So that fight's only going to happen if Billy Joe Saunders makes a full return, commits fully to boxing again, and maybe we'll see that. And that would certainly be a sort of fight that we'd see on a Riyadh season show. Heading back to the chat, and DB Cooper 1, who says, Hearn has shat the bed. He knows AJ's past it. The priority now is to just fight Fury. Another loss impacts his fight purse further. They're trying to keep the title, the little value he has left. Yeah, his value is certainly diminished. There's no question of that. And in my opinion, the value of Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua has diminished considerably over the last sort of 6, 7, 8 months or so. Ramoni Mode XD and DB Cooper 1 going backwards and forwards over Liam Davies and Shabaz Masoud. We'll get to that in just a second. The Fish Dog says, I brought Fury versus Usyk fight on pay-per-view on DAZN, and they auto subscribe me even when cancelled, as the fights they had was all USA time, was well hard to get out of, had to cancel direct debit. Yeah, that's not good to hear from your part, my friend. More DB Cooper 1 and Romano XD going on about Shabaz and Liam Davies. Zambano Love says Wardley isn't top 10 heavyweight. Even Hrgovic contested win over Zhang is better than anything Wardley's done till now. Tend to agree. I mean, what Wardley's done up until now is fight what's been in front of him and the level he's been fighting at. He's the British champion. He's a British level fighter, and he's not proved that he's any more than a British level fighter currently. But the level that he has got certainly could be conceived as contender level. I'd love to see a fight between him and Filip Hrgovic, him versus Zhang, him versus Parker. They're all absolutely brilliant fights, and I don't think it's unfair to chuck him into the same sort of circle as those fighters, and therefore into a possible fight with Daniel Dubois. If it's something that Frank Warren and Queensberry and Turki Al Sheikh want, then it's a fight that we may possibly see. What have we got here? Abigail Brown, she says the fights at the moment don't make me want to spend my cash. I'm sure that'll be changing in December when we see Fury versus Usyk 2. Ginger Desi says, I hope with the news about DAZN, I hope they take their time sorting out the constant issues with their app. It's shockingly bad. Abigail Brown again says the fights are not what people want to see. We want more unification fights. I think we're seeing quite a lot of unification fights. We're seeing undisputed fights as well. He does undisputed for heavyweight, undisputed for light heavyweight as well. So I think there's plenty of undisputed fights. There's plenty of unifications going around. Could there be more? There could always be more. But that's all I have to say on that one. The Fish Dog again says Clark is a big softie, nice guy. Fabio Kebab Shop Q punched him. It was a great shot. You have to say that. DB Cooper 1 says, now I hope Ben stays with Sky. It's good for British boxing. Frank Smith was making fun of Adam Azim for getting 200,000 views. Meanwhile, DAZN probably gets 10k views at best. What else have we got here? DB Cooper 1 again says, what the fuck is happening with Conor Ben? They've been saying we expect a response this week. Sounds like a brown envelope got lost in the Royal Mail system. I'm sure we'll be hearing some news from Conor Ben and his team very, very soon. But it's now time to run on to the final topic of the week, and that's having a little review of the weekend's boxing action and Shabaz Masoud versus Liam Davies. An absolute masterclass. It has to be said from Shabaz Masoud. He went in as an underdog into the fight against the IBO champion in Davies, and an absolutely superb display. The card certainly didn't reflect that. There's been a lot of talk about judging for however long I've been in boxing, and it seems to have ramped up even more recently. But they were that one was one of the worst cards I've seen in my time covering boxing. So, yeah, I mean, what did you think of the performance and the card which had Liam Davies as a winner, Josh?
I'll get talking about the card for Liam Davies straight. I'll get that out of the way. Something needs to change. We can't keep seeing home fighters getting cards like that. Like, essentially, if we knew that card was coming, then Liam Davies has won the fight before he's even started his ring walk. And I think the annoying part about that as well is we've seen the fight and an absolute masterclass from Shabaz Masoud, and a lot more people are spending their time talking about that judge's scorecard than just giving Shabaz the credit for the performance. I know in a way they're giving him that credit by saying, that card should have been way wider, shouldn't even been in Davies' favour. But the fact we've still had that card, it takes away the focus from the performance that Shabaz put on. Shabaz has gone into a fight on, I guess you could say, away soil, not on his promotion, and a fight where not many people were giving him a chance, especially off the back of the Jose San Martin fight around this time last year. Not many people gave Shabaz Masoud a chance, but he went in there in a fight that a lot of people thought he was going to lose and shown he belongs at that level and, outclassed Liam Davies. It's simple as that. I thought just a beautiful performance though from Shabaz Masoud. I think the counter punching was great. I think Liam fought in a bit of a strange way. It was a strange performance from Liam Davies in the fact that I felt he was doing too much work to get those big power shots off, and he was just walking forward and walking into that same counter right hand from Shabaz Masoud. But you can't take anything away from Shabaz. He was just fighting what was in front of him and got the job done. But a great night of boxing as well. A really, really good night, a solid night of boxing, an entertaining card. But yeah, I thought Shabaz was excellent, and going forward now as well, like the title says, he inherits that beef with Inoue. Obviously, Inoue fights Sam Goodman first on Christmas Eve. So wait and see what happens there. The belts might fragment. For all we know, Inoue might move up. But Shabaz has got himself into a perfect spot now, where he's in line for those world titles. If you're going to classify the IBO as a world title, then he's one of the two belt holders at that weight. So surely that puts him in a good spot to get a world title.
A good spot. He's obviously got that IBO belt now, but he'll have to be considered among the contenders for Naoya Inoue if indeed he does get past Sam Goodman on Christmas Eve, and if indeed he does stay at the weight. A lot of talk, as always, about the move up to featherweight. The Nick Ball fight is there if he wants it. There's obviously other fights as well at featherweight for Inoue. But Masoud really massively elevates himself with that win. He's gone from a fighter that didn't have a huge amount of profile to a fighter that's got an IBO strap. He's won in a main event in a big arena, and then now he can now be legitimately considered for a world title shot down the line in 2025. As for Liam Davies, I know he said to us, said to Eamon Khan post fight, which is up on the channel, that the move to featherweight is now the only option on the table. I have to say, watching his interviews post-fight and in the lead-up on the Thursday and Friday, I did think he looked quite considerably weight drained, which is probably a criticism you could have made for his last 2 or 3 fights, and he's put in magnificent performances. But the weight did look like it was a little bit of a struggle this time around for Liam Davies. But there'll be fights for him at featherweight, whether it's starting at sort of English level with a Reece Edwards or even someone like a Thomas Patrick Ward, or you can go straight in to the British with Nathaniel Collins. There's options there at featherweight for Liam Davies, and I'm sure he'll continue to grow as a fighter. He's a popular fighter in that area of the world, in Telford and down in Birmingham. So yeah, big fights around the corner, of course, for Liam Davies. We'll have one more quick check-in at the chat. DB Cooper 1 says, Eubank is just waiting for Conor Benn, his final payday. Shiraz hurts him bad, as does Canelo. No other fights for him. Yeah, I mean, we've just discussed that, myself and Josh, and we tend to agree. We think the Shiraz fight is a possibility, but the only real fight on the table is probably the Conor Benn fight. Thunder Road says, disappointed Eubank didn't utilise his number 1 position for Janabek's 2 belts, but he is not chasing belts, unfortunately. Eubank's made that pretty clear. He's not just sort of done it by his actions. He's verbally told us that he's not chasing belts. He's in it for the money these days. So what can you say? If that's what he wants, then that's what he wants. Hopefully we do get the big fights in terms of exposure, and that will be the Conor Benn fight, and you never know, maybe the Billy Joe Saunders night. I'll just give Vinny a couple of seconds to close the poll, which was, will you be subscribing to the DAZN app, or are you more likely to subscribe to the DAZN app now that Queensberry have joined? Let's have a look and see what we've got. 63% for no and 36% for yes. I don't know who the 1% are, Josh, but 63% saying no. So not too many people likely to now subscribe to DAZN, but 36% saying that Queensberry joining DAZN has indeed changed their mind. I'm not sure if you're a subscriber, Josh, but would it have changed your mind?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I already am a DAZN subscriber anyway. I'm locked in on my year contract, so it wouldn't really make too much of a difference. But no, I guess you could say, yeah, you would, because as just a boxing fan in general, you want to watch as much boxing as you can. And if TNT are going to not have any boxing, then why should I keep hold of my TNT subscription if the whole reason I'm watching on their platform for is for that sport that's not there anymore? So sack off that subscription and go to the next one wherever they're showing it. The results kind of do and don't shock me. I'm sure the 63% who said no have their reasons and potentially ways around watching the boxing. I'm not sure what that could be. But yeah, I'm not overly shocked by the results, to be honest.
No, neither am I. There's unfortunately lots of different ways of watching boxing these days, but with more boxing on DAZN, I think they will probably see a spike in subscribers around April time when Queensberry join Matchroom, join Top Tier, join GBM, Golden Boy, the multitude of promoters that are now choosing DAZN. So that's all we've got for you this week on SO Live. As is customary, I am the host this week. I am Danny Flexen. Indeed, I will give the final word to my co-host, Mr. Josh Hart. What have you got to say this week, Josh?
I'm actually going to just quickly turn back and say that Nottingham got put on the map on Saturday night on that card. We're going to start off Echo Esserman against Ben Vaughan. What an absolute tear-up that was. That was what you call scrap central. What a brilliant fight. Big shout-out to Ben Vaughan as well. Great fight. And then Ezra Taylor. Wow. Trains 10 minutes away from where I live. I might go there down now and just try and learn to see how he did that. 24 seconds. Unreal. So no, I'm just going to leave it there. big shout out to those two Nottingham boys repping my local city. And yeah, hopefully we get to see some massive fights for them soon. And for everyone else, thanks for watching as always. Definitely a bit more of a concerning chat today with some of the things mentioned. I'm hopefully going to imagine that never happened. So yeah, always a pleasure to be on Seconds Out Live, and hopefully I'll be back on again very soon.